Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Dribble, a Courier and Press sports podcast focusing on University of Southern Indiana basketball. I'm your host, Pat Hickey, and I'm lucky to be joined again by Jevin Redman, USI play-by-play voice for 95.7. Jevin, thanks for being here.
As always, it's a pleasure, and looking forward to chatting another week. Basketball season's creeping up on us very quickly, and media day this week. Practice starts this weekend, so before we know it, they'll be off to Purdue for that exhibition opener, and I know everybody around campus, they're starting to get antsy.
Yep. And now for the last 2 weeks, we've talked about the guard spots for the Eagles, and while we continue along to small forward this week, it's another guy who fills different roles. Dribble Taylor, 6'4" senior from Louisville, transfer from Ren Lake College, is listed as a guard on the roster. But Jevin, he was really kind of a Swiss Army knife of sorts last year in his first season with USI.
I think he did pretty much everything but post up and down low. That's about the only thing he didn't do. You look at his stats from last year with Dribble, and just about any category, he led in that category one way or another. He took the most shots on the team from the field and also the three-point line, led them in rebounds with almost 7 a game, had the third most assists, most turnovers, most steals. He was a very active guy and a very key part of the team. And with Dribble, in my opinion, he's kind of the wild card this year. I think this team will go as far as Dribble takes them. On the court, talent-wise, I think he has the most talent of anybody, but it felt like at times, which we'll get into this more in depth throughout the podcast, I don't want to say he wasn't playing with a purpose, but it almost felt like the focus wasn't there. He took a lot of shots, but yet he had the worst field goal percentage from the field and from three on the team. So, like I said, he took a lot of shots. It's one of those things where Dribble needs to be more efficient with his game coming into this season. So we'll get into more of that in depth. But Dribble also stood out in many categories, as I mentioned. He was a lockdown defender at times, had the most steals, and as I mentioned, he rebounded very well, almost 7 rebounds per game. So Dribble did a lot of things well last year, but when you look at the offensive numbers, yeah, he led them in scoring, but when you dive into the numbers, he wasn't real efficient.
Yeah, so he can play a little bit of the 2, the 3, the 4. We're just going to classify him as a 3 for this positional series, just go right in the middle. But yeah, like Jevin said, he led USI in scoring and rebounding last year at about 16 points and 7 boards a game, and also ranked second in the GLVC in steals per game. So, when the postseason awards came out, some felt maybe he was snubbed from the all-conference selections with those numbers. But between that and missing out on the tournament, I don't know if you could have really asked for much more motivation if you're Dribble Taylor. I talked to USI coach Rodney Watson about what he's noticed.
Is that verbally he is so more in tune. Being here his second year, we were doing a drill the other day, and he was kind of talking to some guys that was in the drill ahead of him. And he was on kind of the next guy in line, but he saw something coming up, and he was talking to him as if to say, now, make sure this happens because this is who you got here. So he's starting to, he's seeing, I think what we're doing is, I think he's getting more comfortable with what we're trying to accomplish, and a guy that leads us in scoring, leads us in rebounding, that can put the ball on the floor, can catch and shoot. He has length, the guard. Man, I'm not sure what else you can ask from a guy. So, you're talking about a multi-tool.
All right, so Jevin, how might this version of Dribble Taylor change things for USI?
Well, 2 things from that Watson quote. First off, he said Dribble is more comfortable here at USI. Had to go through that transition phase last year, new teammates, new system. Now into year 2, he's going to be more advanced than he was last year. Also, practicing with a purpose. I mentioned in the opener of this podcast, playing with a purpose as well. Hopefully that practicing with a purpose will transition into the game for Dribble. But not to beat a dead horse, but the first 2 weeks we talked about the addition of Marcellus Washington, and it's a trickle-down effect. It's going to help out Dribble Taylor as well. And I mentioned earlier he has to be more efficient. I don't think Drill's going to get as many shots as he did last year. And with Bobo Drummond now moving more to the 2-guard, shooting guard, I think he's going to take more shots, and so will Alex Stein the more comfortable he gets. So if Dribble wants to put up important numbers for USI, he's going to be more efficient with the shots he takes. Last year, you look at a couple of the stats in the wins, he shot 54% from the field, and the losses 45%. So for Dribble to enhance that, I think it's important for him to get to the rim more. He shot the third most free throws on the team and had the third best free throw percentage on the team. So if he wants to get to the rim, he can score at will there if he's determined. That kind of goes back to playing with a purpose, because as I mentioned, I think he has the most talent on the floor on this USI roster, and he can use that to get to the rim.
Yeah, he's certainly a guy who can, put it on the deck and get to the rim, and like you mentioned, an over 80% from the free throw line shooter. Watson believes we'll see another level out of Dribble this year because of his kind of growing comfortability with the program and his teammates. This is a guy that won a JUCO title with Ren Lake along with Cortez Macklin. So this is senior year. Maybe he's really wanting to get one last good run out of it. But I think USI's hope with Dribble is that maybe he also develops a little bit of a less is more mentality on offense. Watson really stressed, wanting him to be doing a lot more catching and shooting. That's where they felt he was best at, and it kind of carries over from a little bit of our podcast last week when we talked about, or when they talked about wanting to be doing more kind of off the ball screens. Jevin and I were also talking a little bit before the show about how, Dribble maybe was a little bit trigger happy last year from beyond the three. He shot 113 more 3-pointers than Alex Stein, who showed he was a kind of the superior shooter. 39% for Stein and 33 for Taylor. So Jevin, I guess just what do you think? Just based off kind of these comments from Watson that a Dribble Taylor who looked to drive more, kind of drive and kick, catch and shoot. What do you think that would do for the Eagles offensively?
Well, I found it somewhat interesting that Coach Watson expected Taylor to catch and shoot more, because pretty much what he did last year. And it's not necessarily you want to tell Dribble to stop shooting, because I think he can score well and lead the team in that category. But then again, kind of back to my points the first 2 weeks, you're taking shots away from Alex Stein, who's a pure shooter, and you're going to be taking shots away from Bobo Drummond, which will be more impactful this year because he's at the 2 spot. So with Dribble, I want to see him get out in transition and get to the rim. Because he is a man. He is a beast one-on-one in transition, and nobody's going to stop him getting to the rim. So that will allow him to get to the foul line as well, which he succeeded last year. I found that a bit interesting that they wanted to catch and shoot more. In my opinion, he can really attract defenders off the dribble and set up a Bobo Drummond, Alex Stein on the perimeter. And also you'll have Marcellus Washington on the floor to attract defenders as well off the dribble to kick to Taylor. Maybe that's where Coach Watson was talking about catch and shoot more with the Marcellus penetration. But not to beat a dead horse again, but Dribble Taylor, I'd like to see him get to the rim more.
Okay. Taylor played about 26 minutes per game last year, so let's kind of just talk about the top option off the bench. And we've got Jacob Norman. Here's a guy 10 minutes a game last year as a true freshman. Primary role, from what I understood, was that they brought him in to really just be a defensive stopper, kind of be that bulldog defensively. And I thought he did a pretty solid job for being a freshman. He brings intensity to the floor and could be a spark on that end, or sometimes offensively and in transition with his ability to finish at the rim. I talked to Norman at Media Day on Tuesday. He's continued to work religiously on his jumper this summer and is eager to contribute more as a sophomore.
End of the year, after our last game against Bellarmine, talked with Coach a little bit after the game, and obviously, when we got back, met with him and stuff, and he was just harping on, he really wanted me to work on a pull-up, 15 to 18 foot, and just mid-range, just being able to knock that down, really put pressure on the defense. Last year, I don't think I took a jump shot, right? So that was my focus the entire offseason. Just pull up, 15 foot, anything, like a mid-range. So worked on that religiously over the offseason and stretched it out. Started working on my 3 a little bit, and I think I made a lot of progress. So looking forward to see it pay off.
All right. So finally, Jevin, with Norman, a hometown kid who we could kind of copy and paste similar things that people say about Alex Stein last week in regards to just his passion for the game and his work ethic. I guess just simply, what did you think of Jake Norman last year?
Well, I almost felt like his freshman year was kind of trial by error. Throw him out there and see how he can do. And I thought he excelled in some areas. Everyone knew he's going to be a little bit offensively challenged in his first year, and I think that's going to improve as his time passes by at USI. On the defensive end, I thought that's where he excelled the most. Early on, you could tell maybe he was a step slow, but he really got better as the season went along, and down those final 5 or 6 games, he started to get more consistent minutes, 15 to 20 minutes off the bench because of his defensive ability, his ability to guard around the rim. So I thought that was one area that was encouraging for Norman. On the offensive game, he'll tell you the same thing. He's got to work on his jumper. And for him to be effective at the college level, he has to have a jumper. In high school, he was so much more athletic than everybody else. He was able to get the ball on the baseline and score at the rim without any problem. But now, those guys are equally as good as him. So if he can develop a 10 to 15-foot jumper, he'll see significant minutes this year, I think. And I know Norman's been working hard with Alex Stein by his side as well. That's just the type of kid Norman is. He'll take big strides his sophomore year, I think. But I said it once he came in, I thought his junior, senior year would be his real takeoff years where he's one of your main players, in my opinion. But this year, I think you're going to see much the same off the bench, 15 to 20 minutes, using defensive role, and I think he'll be somewhat improved on the offensive end. Numbers-wise, offensively, it wasn't a big deal last year because that's not what they really wanted out of him, but he only scored in double figures twice, and his most points he scored in GLVC play was 5. So with this roster that's been constructed at the guard spot, you're not going to need him to score a ton, but it would be nice for him to be a threat, and the more he gets on the offensive end, it'll really just be added bonus because that attracts more attention away from your main players. So I'm looking forward to see how much better he improved on his jumper heading into this year.
All right, good deal. Good stuff as always, Jevin. Thanks for coming down to talk hoops with me, and thanks to our listeners as well. Next week we'll take a look at 2 newcomers at the power forward spot. Julius Rahala, I thought it was Rahala at the beginning, but it is Rajala.
I've heard multiple things, but last I heard it was Rajala, yes.
So he's kind of more of a stretch 4, and then they complement him with another newcomer, Dejar Dixon. He's more of kind of your prototypical 4. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like us to talk about or for me to ask, just get at us on Twitter. For Pat Hickey and Jevin Redman, we're out of here.
Adios.